Most of us go through a period in the aftermath of an emotionally abusive relationship where we kind of beat ourselves up, whether it's with a covert narcissist or any other emotionally abusive person. When we look back at everything that's happened, we kind of ask the questions of, why did I fall into this? And why did I stay so long? And there's always those moments of doubt. And in this video, I want to address that doubt, but I want to address it specifically for those of you who have been in a relationship with a covert narcissist, because this is a different type of abuser. So if you feel like you've been duped by the covert narcissist, this video is for you. Welcome to the Common Ego community. My name is Christina, and on this channel we talk about narcissistic abuse, its connection with spirituality, and we attempt to answer the question, where do we go from here? So if that all sounds good to you, be sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a thing. In this video, we're going to explore who gets into a relationship with a covert narcissist. There are three common types of people who get into relationships with this specific type of abuser that I have noticed. And these types may not be all-encompassing, but they're common enough that I wanted to call them out in this video. We're also going to cover, how does it happen? And what can we take away from this experience? But first I want to take a moment to say thank you to you. This community is really awesome. I don't get to respond to all the comments, but I do read them all. And I just love how supportive each of you are. I love reading those comments where you all support each other and answer each other's questions. It's really becoming a strong community, and I love that. And I also wanted to take a moment to thank those of you who started the 7-day Kickstarter program. I've gotten some great feedback there, and I love connecting with you guys over there. That program and this channel in general is all about building positivity and lifting each other up. And that's something that we need and deserve now more than ever. Okay, so now to answer the who of it all. Who gets into a relationship with a covert narcissist? And there's the all-encompassing answer is, well, anyone could. But there are three specific types that I want to call out in this video because I see them very commonly and you might identify with one of them. So the first type of person who is likely to get into a relationship with a covert narcissist is somebody who's had a fair amount of experience with the overt type of narcissist. And why does this happen? Because the covert narcissist appears very much to be the anti-narcissist, the opposite of an overt narcissist. And now they're not actually the opposite, but they do kind of present that way. And the second type is very similar, but they kind of start in that place. The second type is somebody who's just repelled by the overt, the grandiosity of the overt narcissist. This person hasn't had a relationship with an overt narcissist, but they have never wanted to. So they didn't have an overt narcissist in their life growing up, and they never really wanted to as an adult. So they stay far away from that type. So this is the person that, although they may have some codependency issues, they struggle to admit that codependency because in many areas of their life, they are very strong and very independent. The third type of person who is likely to get into a relationship with a covert narcissist is the empath or the highly sensitive person. And this person is also likely to be a fixer, a helper. If this is you, even if you see the issues in somebody else early on, you feel somewhat responsible for helping them through it. And because you identify that you have a higher level of emotional intelligence than this other person, you kind of feel like you can do it. But we've all learned in learning about cluster B personalities that it's not possible. We can't help everyone. And that people really need to want to help themselves. And narcissists in most cases do not see the need to help themselves because they don't see any problems with themselves. But so these are three common personality types that get into relationships with the covert narcissist. And it's okay if you don't identify with any of those three types. The rest of this video will still apply to you. Okay, so now for the how. How did we get into this relationship? And the first thing that we will have to look at is the covert narcissists themselves. So I have a video about being friends with a covert narcissist, and it's not a good idea if you're gonna have a close friendship. But in that video, I talk about how you might even have covert narcissist friends and not know it. Because if you don't get close enough to this person to see the abuse or the disorder, you're just not going to know. These people appear very normal at the surface. They might even appear shy or awkward. And so you wouldn't think that they're an emotionally abusive person. You would think that they're very internal and that they're not going to be abusive to other people. So one of the answers to the questions of how did I get into this is because this person seems a lot like other people. If they didn't, if it wasn't convincing, then so many of us wouldn't find ourselves in this situation. So that is definitely one reason why we need to kind of let ourselves off the hook for this. It's not something that any of us were really trained to look out for. So another answer to the question, how did we get into this relationship with a covert narcissist, could have to do with the situation. So sometimes even if we don't identify as being codependent people, we could find ourselves in situations that make us a little bit more vulnerable. And I'm talking about situations like pregnancy or divorce or loss, a period where you're going through something and you feel like you need somebody else. So if you're in that and you're feeling that, when things start getting weird with the covert narcissist, as they inevitably do, you're more likely to focus on the positive and do everything in your power to try to make this relationship work, even if you would have walked under any other circumstances. So the third answer to the question of how did we get into this is just codependency in itself. And that's a hard thing for some of us to admit. And I'll do a video on that a little bit more in depth soon. But I can tell you, for me, it was something that was very hard for me to admit. But in looking at my behavior and my own patterns, I had to admit some level of codependency. Even though there was also a situational element to it, there was a little bit of codependency going on there too. Okay, so now where do we go from here? So when we talked about the covert narcissist personality type, I mentioned that we should let ourselves off the hook, and that is something that we really, really need to do. Getting into these relationships has nothing to do with your intelligence level. It has to do with your heart. You had the best of intentions in getting into this relationship, and that is not something you should ever beat yourself up over. And I hear a lot of people saying, well, I feel stupid after this, and I've been there too. But there's one thing I want to say about that. Just imagine yourself saying that to somebody else in this community. You wouldn't. You wouldn't say it to me, and you wouldn't say it to somebody else in the comments. You definitely wouldn't say it to somebody in person. So go ahead and give yourself the same love and respect that you would give someone else. You would understand someone else's reasoning. So try to look at your own with a deeper level of understanding and compassion. And the next thing we can do from here is to learn the lessons. The first and most important lesson that we have all learned is how dangerous it can be to get involved with somebody who is emotionally unhealthy. So that's something that we have a greater understanding of now. And you may still be learning about emotional intelligence and how to spot an emotionally abusive person, and that's okay. But the important lesson that we all can take away from this relationship is how incredibly dangerous it can be. Because I think that's something that we probably didn't really understand when we got into these relationships. Okay, so there's a flip side to this coin. So we know how dangerous it could be to be in a relationship with somebody who's emotionally unhealthy. So just coming out of this relationship, you can look at your own self and your own state of emotional health. And we can recognize that it is not really a time to jump into another relationship. Now is a time to start working on that self-love and working on building ourselves up. So in my emotional guidance series, I talked about how the narcissist triggers false beliefs within us. So narcissists that we meet in our adult lives, they trigger false beliefs that were already there. So if you're willing, in the aftermath of this relationship, you can look at all of those false beliefs and start working through them. Start practicing self-love and trying to believe the things that are actually true about you, the good things, the positive things. And that's a lot of what we do in the 7-day kickstart. There's a huge focus on self-love and reinforcing those positive beliefs. But it's something you can also do on your own. If you haven't done so already, I highly recommend you check out the emotional guidance series. There's some good information there for you to help get you started in reprogramming the damage that the narcissist did by reinforcing those false beliefs. So by now, I hope you see that there is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of for having been in this relationship. We've all been there on some level, and you entered this relationship with the best of intentions. You very likely have a good heart. And if you found this video helpful at all, hit that like button, and if you aren't already subscribed, go ahead and do so now. Hit that notification bell so you can be notified whenever I post new videos, and I'll see you next time.